Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. This is episode 190. 190, guys. Holy crap. And the guys I'm talking about, my name's Aaron, and the guys I'm with, as always, is Fredo and Dave. How are we doing, guys?
Hey,
No, doing okay.
Are we surviving Saints free agency?
Kind of, sort of, but not really. I mean, we kind of knew that we were not going to be busy. I'm just less enthused about the signings that we've made.
Yeah.
Kind of, keeping the guys we want to keep. Tyrann Mathieu staying, Demario Davis staying, good. Nathan Peterman, I'm less. But look,
I sent a message to my sister and my wife when they named him the quarterback backup, and I said, to paraphrase Major League, who's this effing guy? It was
yeah,
like Mitchell Friedman is going to be our backup quarterback. No,
yeah, he's a meme lord for all the wrong reasons, but at the same time, the MO under Mike Mickey Lewis is we get a guy in the building that we could say we fill that spot.
yeah.
That way, we're never going to the draft thinking, "Oh my God, we don't have an X. We have to draft that." Even if it's just a warm body that will never see the field, they want to know that all spots are full.
Well, none of it matters until they're doing something on the field anyway. In Nebraska news, our AD is going to Texas A&M. Nobody saw that coming. That happened yesterday, so that's terrific. But hooray! And in local news, our front street is going to be started to be torn up starting Monday until May 31st. So we'll probably have to park like a block away, but it's they're going to be tearing out the whole thing, putting in new sewage and water lines and stuff like that. So it'll be good, but it'll be a big pain in the caboose.
They were out there doing that on Sunday, fixing some waterline issues because over the weekend and into this week there was a TV show. I forget what the name of the TV show. Some set in the 70s because when I was taking my morning walk, they had 70s police cruisers and Dodge Darts and those kinds of vehicles. So, parked in really great condition. So but I was like, man, I want to take a photo. I'm like, I'm pretty sure if I do some plains clothes off, it's gonna be like, and you are, and what are you doing here? And why are you taking a photo? So I didn't. But yeah, they were filming a TV show. So, but in the meantime, the city decided to do a bit of work and decided to mess with my toilet. So fun.
So since this is a Star Wars podcast, but it's similar story. When I was last in Ireland, friends took me around Dingle and showed me where they filmed part of The Last Jedi, and they said it was really interesting. One of their friends was just out on his morning walk and just started walking through the closed set, and eventually some cop came up and said, "No, you can't walk here," but he walked through most of it. So anyway, you just gotta act like you know what you're doing. So, all right, well, yeah. Anything else for the good or Dave? Things going well in your world?
yeah, things are fine. You were talking about streets being torn up. I was just thinking about Claiborne and Canal, and two major thoroughfares are just a royal pain in the butt trying to get anywhere in the city right now. But,
By the way, Dave, aren't you and your lovely wife racing come Saturday, weather permitting? Is that this Saturday or is that 2 Saturdays from now?
It's in a couple Saturdays. Yeah.
Okay.
We got time.
This Saturday is the St. Patrick's Day parade. We're coming up on St. Patrick's Day weekend, everybody. So
yeah, you got to gear up for that one as well, though. It's similar to running a long race.
The St. Patrick's Day parade.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I mean, and that's one you really have to be. Oh, you really have to be paying attention, because if you get beamed with a cabbage, it's not a good day. But I think it was one parade. Is Britt. I caught a cabbage, and then Britt got a bottle of Jameson from a drunk party walker who just wanted her to open the bottle so he could pour a shot. Then he gave her the rest of the bottle. I'm like, this isn't fair. Anyway,
Remember last year I caught a whole bag of Jello shots.
It's funny. This as fun as this parade is, it's like every stereotype of the of Irish. I mean, when they're throwing Irish Spring and Lucky Charms, and I mean, I understand the cabbage and the potatoes and the carrots. It's like the idea is that you can, go home and make a stew, but yeah. Anyway, that is fun.
If you've not been here for this thing, like imagine New Orleans levels of drunkenness applied to the St. Patty's parade that you're more familiar with in your hometown or wherever. And there you go, right? It's like Mardi Gras mixed with St. Patty's, and it's just these guys are falling down and just
It's yeah, it's
it's
so
entertaining, but
so when I was in
yeah.
Nebraska, the 501st, the Star Wars costuming group, we marched in the St. Patrick's Day parade in Omaha, and I'll never forget. It's like the first St. Patrick's Day parade I did. Here we are. I was like so proud because I'm in my new stormtrooper armor, and I'm like, this is cool. I'm marching in my stormtrooper armor, and we walking downtown Omaha, and there's this little old lady standing there on the corner, and she says, "What in the hell does this have to do with Ireland?" And I was like, well, touche, lady. But anyway, so yeah, no, it'll be fun, and hopefully the rain will hold off. But and I have a couple gigs, so yeah, much fun will be had. Well, let's talk tonight. We're going to be talking about the Bad Batch. There were 2 episodes that dropped last night: Infiltration and Extraction. So yeah, so we'll talk about what those had to offer. We've got some interesting news that has dropped in the last couple of days, so that's going to be kind of interesting. But first, let's do some trivia. Da, da, da. All right. So, who wants to go first? Dave, you're going to go first.
All right.
What city affords Luke the opportunity to haggle with a used land speeder dealer? What city affords Luke the opportunity to haggle with a used land speeder dealer?
I say Mos Eisley.
You think you hate it now, wait till you drive it. Yes, it is Mos Eisley, yes. All right.
That was a pretty good speeder, though. He was sad to part with it.
I think, okay, so which would you rather have, land speeder or speeder bike?
Speeder bike.
Apparently this was a tough question for Dave because he stopped and he leaned back and put his hand on his chin. He was like, huh.
I've gotten to the point in my life where I'm more practical minded as a father, so like the land speeder, so that I can take the kids places.
I love the Kenner land speeder because it had the like the Volkswagen trunk, in the front instead of the back, that you could store blasters and stuff. And yeah, anyway. All right. Fredo, to you, who warns Sebulba that Jar Jar Binks is a, quote, big-time outlander? Who warns Sebulba that Jar Jar Binks is a, quote, big-time outlander?
I believe that was Anakin Skywalker.
Darth Vader himself. Yeah, Anakin Skywalker it is. All right, and to me, who, aching from a Cloud City torture session, notes, quote, they never even asked me any questions. Who, aching from a Cloud City torture session, notes, quote, they never even asked me any questions. That would be Han Solo. Dun, dun, dun. By the way, we don't have this in the news, but kind of sad story I read about today, because talking about Anakin Skywalker here. Jake Lloyd, he's 35 years old, and he's apparently had a major psychotic episode. He's diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, and he's now, I guess, hospitalized. So all the good thoughts that way, and it got me thinking. I really wish that at some point he has the opportunity that like Ahmad Best and Hayden Christensen has gotten appreciation, in these later years for their roles, because I don't think you could have found a better kid or a better portrayal of what Darth Vader as a little kid would be. You needed this scrappy, big hearted, but quick to be ticked off, you know. And because people were critical of him, and I don't know why. It's like, did they want Draco Malfoy? I'm sorry. This is a very bit tangent. It wasn't on our list, but I don't know. Real quick, I mean, what do you guys think Jake Lloyd as Anakin Skywalker? Yay, nay?
Mostly fine. I mean, like, I wasn't like blown away by anything that he did in real time, but then there was so much backlash there that never made a lot of sense to me. Child actors are going to struggle at times. They're not going to get the line delivery perfect. They're going to seem a little over eager at times, but it's just that comes with the territory. And I thought he did a really good job. And to your point, your larger point about him now, I do agree that it would be nice to see him get his flowers, so to speak. His mom said he's doing much better now. She said that she thinks he would like to be part of the saga again at some point, and like maybe a cameo, like we saw with Ahmad Best. Something along those lines. It would be like a really cool gesture, I think.
Yeah.
And I'd be all for that if again, if you were interested and if you were up to it. But yeah, no, I never got it.
I remember if you're watching the making of the Phantom Menace, even when they're doing the screen test, even George Lucas said like one kid was just too smooth and too good. They needed, again, you needed this kind of rough around the edges kid, and I think they got it right. Fredo?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of his performance, I thought it was fine. I thought it was exactly what George Lucas wanted, which a lot of times we tend to put the success or failure of a performance on the performer, the actor, but we tend to miscategorize the efforts that the director, the writer, that the producer. I mean, they're looking for a specific performance. They're not necessarily looking for the most skilled actor or Laurence Olivier Jr., so to speak. They want a specific performance in that role, and I think he did his part. As for the article, it's unfortunate. I mean, his mom voices a number of really scary situations, and she's quick to say this: none of it, what happened, is related to his performance or his history with Star Wars. Has everything to do with the psychosocial history of his family.
Yeah.
Meaning, this is a congenital condition he inherited and he's been struggling with. And she admits he still loves Star Wars. She shared a picture of bringing an Ahsoka doll to him, and he likes wearing Star Wars stuff still. So, it's a shame because, like with anybody, you hope that this kind of thing wouldn't happen to anybody. But the unfortunate reality is we're all a gumbo of all the genes that we inherited, and sometimes that gumbo comes out great, and sometimes it doesn't. But in terms of his performance, I thought it was fine for what it would. He was a 10-year-old kid thrust into the realities of intergalactic politics.
Yeah, and it's important. I mean, it's been talked about since like Simone Biles, taking not competing or because just focusing on her mental health, and other people taking it, just making that not a stigma anymore to talk about those things. So I think it was important. But I tell you what, I was right with Jake Lloyd when he was 10 years old. I mean, in that documentary, when he, it says he's reading the script and he says Coruscant, and George Lucas says, it's almost like if George Lucas was wearing a tie, he would have went, it's Coruscant. I remember reading whatever book I was reading that had Coruscant in it, and I was like, I said Coruscant. I mean, how do you come up with Coruscant with that? So my heart went out to the kid. But anyway,
we pronounced it Coruscant, I think, for a number of years because it was on. It was in the Star Wars Monopoly. where you see the name spelled out, and of course it had appeared in literature before then, to your point, but yeah,
So
Coruscant.
again, we that's what we should do. Sometime we're going to have to do our top 5 most horrible Star Wars words to have to pronounce.
McClunky.
So we might have to do that. That would be fun. All right. Well, let's get into some news.
So we'll start with a bit of further sad news. So condolences to the family of actor Michael Culver, who passed away a few weeks back at the age of 85. It was finally announced. For those of you who don't know who that is, you will know him better as Captain Nita.
Apology accepted, Captain Nita.
From The Empire Strikes Back.
Apology accepted, Captain Nita.
Apology accepted, Captain Nita.
Exactly, which is crazy because he's somebody who acted over 50 years, had a number of roles, but yeah, it is. I in a weird way, his biggest claim to fame was apology accepted, Captain Nita.
Apology accepted, Captain Nita.
And he admitted back in a podcast back a few years back that he knew nothing about the movie, about Star Wars, before auditioning, and then he was surprised that he was still getting people coming up and asking him for autographs and whatnot. He says his quote line was, "When I did Star Wars, it just seemed to be, they're doing a movie about starships." So I did it. I thought, well, I hope it's successful. You don't expect 40 years later to be still signing autographs for it because, that's the nature of Star Wars. So yeah, thoughts to his family, age 85 for Michael Culver. Let's go to happier news, though. If you have nothing else to share out there.
No.
So today yesterday, we got a nice article over on Collider from Miss Patty Jenkins stating that she's back working on Rogue Squadron. It's back from the dead. Nothing ever dies. So apparently
no one's ever actually gone. Yeah.
Exactly. Apparently, the article goes, in a stunning turn of events, Patty Jenkins has claimed that she has signed a new deal with Lucasfilm and Disney to work as writer-director of Rogue Squadron, which was agreed just prior to this summer's strikes. Jenkins, who left the role in order to make Wonder Woman 3, told Ben Mankiewicz on the TCM Max podcast Talking Pictures that she had signed an agreement to return to a galaxy far, far away. Obviously, there have been no further updates on the project back when it got pulled back in 2022. It had first been announced in 2020. She wanted to make the ultimate fighter pilot movie influenced by her dad, who was a U.S. Air Force pilot. But then, in her own words, I left Star Wars to do Wonder Woman 3. I thought maybe I'll come back to Star Wars after that. So we did a deal for that to happen, started a deal, but I thought I was doing Wonder Woman. When that went away, I paused because Wonder Woman, along with a lot of the DC Extended Universe properties, got put back on the shelf because James Gunn and Peter Safran are now running that arm of Warner Brothers. So they basically said, Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, The Flash, you guys are the last, and Blue Beetle, you guys are the last thing that we need to get out in terms of product. We are shutting everything down. We're going back to the drawing board. We're getting this right. So no more Wonder Woman with Gal Gadot and Patty Jenkins. So she continues. When that went away, Lucasfilm and now we're like, we got to finish this deal. So we finished the deal right as the strike was happening. So now I own a draft of Star Wars, and we'll see what happens there. And we'll see, it's hard. They give you a hard job in front of them of what's the first movie they're going to do. They have other directors who have been working, but I'm now, back on doing Rogue Squadron. We'll see what happens. We need to develop, get it to where we're both super happy with it. So obviously, she's back working on the script. She had walked away about a year or so ago. The movie had gone on the shelf. I wouldn't expect it to get to us anytime before the end of this decade at the earliest. But it's a good sign. Hey, she's back.
Yeah. Again, it's like we're talking about with the Saints. It doesn't matter until I actually see something on the field or I see something on the screen. So, I mean, God, talk about a jaded, Star Wars fan. It's like this should be happy news, but I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'll believe it when I see it, but I mean,
I think anybody that's been following along to this point would be justified in feeling that way, right? These
Yeah.
are, like these announcements occur and then they sort of fizzle out, and then new ones come along and those fizzle out, and it's been a while since we've seen a movie, right? So I think it's justifiable to say, like, we'll see, we'll see what happens.
The cynic in me is like, wonder, is she sitting down, talking to somebody and just says, yeah, I'm working on Star Wars again. I mean, maybe she is writing something, but Lucasfilm isn't, paying her to do so right now, and so trying to, if she gets it out in the press, then does Lucasfilm have to say, okay, yeah, will herself into it? You know what I mean? It's like the cynic makes me, I don't know. But yeah, like I said, I'm just jaded. That's all. I would be thrilled to see her movie. I would be thrilled to see what she puts together. But it's yeah, like I said, we'll find out.
Yeah, and I think there's got to be a recognition within the bowels of Lucasfilm and Disney. Look, we now have a number of movie projects that have been sitting there on the back burner of people's mind for going on 5 years now. Whether we're talking Rogue Squadron with Patty Jenkins, whether we're talking that Taika Waititi movie, whether we're talking, now some of the movies have been announced. This stuff at some point, as Dave always says, you need to get something out. You can't just keep promising and promising and promising. At some point, you have to come out with something that you can put on a screen and people will go out and see. Because otherwise, it just feels, like Lucy taking the football away.
We should put a poll out on our Twitter feed to say, on next week's episode, will we have a story of Lucasfilm saying, no, Rogue Squadron's not coming back?
50-50, right? 50-50 shot on that one. Though, I mean, so I'll be a little bit positive. I think her story lines up with the facts, right? Like, the Wonder Woman stuff went away. All right, so now she has a hole in her schedule. Freda's point, and I made this point as well, this December will have gone 5 calendar years since they released a movie in the theater. So there's a hole in Lucasfilm's schedule. They can make it work. I mean, they can absolutely make it work and make it happen.
And we know for a fact that Bob Iger is strongly pushing for Star Wars to get back into theaters. That's the other thing. It's like, it'd be one thing if it was just, oh, well, we're in no rush. We got that Disney Plus stuff. We got our TV shows. We got our video games. It's fine. We'll get to it when we get to it. Now, there's an active element now at the back of Lucasfilm driving all this. And it's Bob Iger saying, we didn't pay all this money just for a funny show that we can put on a streaming service. We need this to move product. We need this to move butts into seats. We need multi-billion-dollar returns, and we only get that with a movie. So, get your ducks in a row. Let's go.
I'm back in the position though now of having to be feeling awkward about the timing of everything. It's like, okay, so we're gonna release our Mandoverse movie, then we're gonna do like a departure from that, then we're gonna release another Mandoverse movie, then we're gonna do a departure from. And it's like, just stop with the if you can actively avoid that, do it, because I think they're actively shooting themselves in the foot with that. I think there are a lot of people that go, oh, I'll go to the newest Star Wars movie, and
it
5
doesn't
minutes
connect
in,
to the last one.
Yeah. Like, where's Rey?
Yeah.
That those anecdotes, they don't go away in my mind. So, don't do that. If you can avoid it, don't do it. Sorry.
Get off Dave's lawn. All right. Well, cool. Well, we'll see what happens. So, and this other bit of news here was really kind of interesting as well.
Mm-hmm. So, actress Nika Futterman, aka best known to you, me, and everybody else as the voice of Asajj Ventress in Clone Wars and every other piece of media of Star Wars. She was over at Planet Comic Con in Kansas City this weekend, and somebody asked her about her upcoming appearance in The Bad Batch. We know she's coming. Her line was, quote, "It's all very exciting, but The Bad Batch is just an appetizer for what's to come," end quote.
Dun, dun, dun.
So,
Do you think she went off book and people in Lucasfilm were like, "Oh, crud"?
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
we,
And I think it was an offhand remark to like not a major outlet, right?
it's a Comic Con, it's an interview at a con.
Yeah,
There's fans.
yeah,
You know, you get all the excitement of the crowd hyping you up and cheering you on. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it with some of the big name actors. Whenever they get to celebration, all of a sudden they get in front of an audience of a couple thousand people, and they're all cheering you on. And all you want to do is please those people. And if you can let kind of something slip without obviously revealing anything, hey, now they love me even more.
So trying to okay, so now we get to play the game of
the feud.
If so, where is that coming in? Because remember, Bad Batch is happening well before episode 4.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, she's supposedly dead, so they've got to explain how she's coming back in the Bad Batch. I still contend that she's going to be the first, successful clone with Force sensitivity. I think she's going to be the proof of concept. Where does she? I mean, she is a Night Sister, so it's like, well, that you think like Ahsoka season 2, but then that's many years after this. But of course, if she's a, raised from the dead zombie, Force wielder, I suppose it doesn't matter. But I don't know, where do you think that she would show up?
Well, and I saw a few people make comments on the post saying, "Hey, maybe this means it tells the Jedi a storyline, or
That's
maybe
true.
like a short miniseries." I mean, we know from the way that the lore goes,
And we know Tales of the Jedi is coming.
mm-hmm.
So okay,
and we know that she's not supposed to be here. Just point fact. So they're gonna have to have some sort of explanation. I just think I could see any number of things where she could be an interesting character to continue this story once the Bad Batch steps off the stage. If you wanted to eventually find a way to link Omega with the stuff that's going on with both Ahsoka and Mando, all the stuff that eventually is going to lead into that Mandoverse movie that Dave Filoni is going to eventually have to produce. So maybe she's a way to continue that story in the background through a few episodes here or there. I don't think we'll get a TV show based on her, just because, while she is a fun character and a fan favorite, I don't necessarily know that she's got enough pull to just get her own dedicated TV show.
Yeah.
I might be wrong, but I just don't think that. She's always worked better, in small doses as opposed to being the focus of the story.
I'll probably wait and see on it, just see how she's introduced. Because if she's introduced with other characters, which is sort of like her own sort of mini universe, it would make a lot more sense to go that direction and give her own series. Because I think this is very much almost 100% duplication of what they did with the Bad Batch at the end of the Clone Wars series. They introduced the Bad Batch for 5 episodes and gave us that their own little story and their own little world, several different characters sort of comprising this thing. And it's all right, you got this little sort of micro series, and then they're like, oh, by the way, Clone Wars is over, there's Bad Batch. It might be a way for them to sort of keep the trains rolling, so to speak. It's what is going to be the next animation project? And it wouldn't surprise me if she were part of an ensemble at all. And to your point, is she going to be able to carry the whole thing by herself? And like, what would that look like? And where would she go? And no idea about any of that. But I do think if she gets introduced and you see like her with an involved story at that stage of things, it's like, oh, look at this background, this interesting background that she has. And oh, look at these two side characters that she is interacting with. That to me would be like a major tell that that's where they're headed with it, and that it is going to be its own series.
Sorry for the ding. I'm getting a text message. That wasn't your time is up.
My time's up.
No, I think Occam's Razor, now that Fredo said it, Occam's Razor, I mean, Tales of the Jedi would be a perfect place to tell a story of hers. And you could have Dooku along with that. You could have Ashley Eckstein as Ahsoka because they have an interesting connection. So anyway, cool.
Yeah, no, it creates an opportunity to tell, and that's one of the things Tales of the Jedi does allow you to do. You're able to take a character that maybe you don't feel should get a 10 episode, 13 episode run. Give them 3. Give them a story, connected in some ways to other stuff that's happened before, and while giving the fans something that they're happy with. And there's ways to do it so that everybody's happy. And it just, what I will say, it's like, and we, just so we can move on, it's she's such a fun character. I'm glad that she's coming back because it's, sometimes, we don't, we tend to forget sometimes that these, some of these characters, yes, there's a dark period in the galaxy's time, but some of these characters are just really, really fun. And you want to see them having fun.
My money's on full series if they introduce her in a fairly involved manner.
All right. Sound very confident about that. All right. Cool. Right. Well, let's talk about Bad Batch. Episodes 3 and 5 and 6, 6 and 7. They both say 6.
6
and 7.
Infiltration and extraction. Basically one big episode. And really, again, not going to go through, plot point by plot point because basically what was happening here was the chess pieces were being moved around the board. This isn't a filler episode. It's very much a setup episode. It's getting some, like I said, some chess pieces into play. Some interesting things. You had a Republic, well, now an Imperial senator and a Separatist leader having a meeting. So thing that kind of popped into my brain was, are we seeing the actual beginnings of the rebellion? This is way in front of, episode 3 when, Padme and Mon Mothma and Bail and everything. But so are we seeing the seed being planted of a rebellion? You have these mysterious assassins, these altered clones, if you will. These, like I said, just trying to figure out what these assassins are, what that plot point is. So yeah, just like I said, a lot of nothing really propelled the story forward. It just got some pieces into place. They're good episodes, but
Yeah, off the top of my head, and I think one of the things that I'm finding most intriguing between this show, Clone Wars, some of the other stuff that we see, is that it doesn't feel like there was ever one point where somebody said, we will rebel against the Empire. We will form a rebellion. It feel like it was very much an organic thing that throughout the galaxy, as the Emperor and the Empire kind of came down on top of everybody, a lot of the people who still had the memory of what things were before kind of went, no, we're not down with this. They're not okay with this, and we're going to find a way to oppose it. But they recognized that they had to do that in the shadows. They could just come out and, give a speech in the Senate floor. You'll end up in jail. So it's interesting because and we know that, given what we see in Rogue One or whatever, not everybody has the same idea as to how to fight the Empire. Some people are much more diplomatic. Some people are way more extremists. But it's good that they're giving us these moments with characters that we know. These are characters that we saw in Clone Wars. Both the senator as well as the separatist leader. I forget their names, you forgive me, but these are characters who we've seen stand up for what they believe. And here they are continuing that fight, even though they're on opposite sides. They're both recognizing the bigger threat now is that guy.
I'm going to wreck the pronunciation. Avi Singh and Ryu Chuchi.
Yeah, Chuchi. Yeah.
Chuchi, yeah. By the way, on a tangent, because I was thinking, you guys have always said we've got to figure out what happened to the clones. That's, they're dealing with that. It would be really Bush League for them to say, hey, we found all the clones. We're going to relocate them to Alderaan. Anyway, but no, Dave, what did you think of these two episodes? I mean, again, do you agree that it was kind of, like I said, this was setting things up?
Or I think ultimately, yeah. And not to get put the cart before the horse, but with the introduction of one character in particular and his group, I think there's going to be at some point another encounter with them, and
well, go ahead and put the cart before the horse. You're talking about Wolf.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely.
Which, if you have not watched Rebels, means nothing to you, But I mean, this is one of those things where it's kind of because we have Wolf, we have Gregor, and we have Rex, who are the three clones that we meet in Rebels, which happens. So we know those three are going to be on basically the same team, and they're going to go off in the sunset together. But right now, you're right. Wolf and Rex are on opposite sides of the conflict.
Yeah. And so, again, now that you bothered to put Wolf into the series, it's okay, so you're gonna give us more. I think that the expectation there is fair. That it may not. I don't. Again, you have to be careful about drawing too many conclusions. You're not going to get to a point A to point B to point C, and now we're ready for Rebels. It probably won't be that clean. But I think they're going to take further steps forward. And I think, why do you introduce this character if not to use him? And this was not fulfilling, in that way. I mean, again, it creates a little extra conflict for Rex, which is interesting. The sort of standoff they had at the very end of episode 7 was good, but it really doesn't feel like that's the end of Wolf at all. So,
no,
again, this is a setup.
And what's interesting is that you have two factions of clones. You have three factions of clones. You have the clones who are with Rex, who are y'all are nuts, and they're trying to, get the rest of the clones. They're trying to locate them and get them on their side, and take care of them. You have the faction that apparently Wolf is part of, where it's, I'm a soldier and I'm following orders. My job shifted from the Republic to the Empire, and I'm doing my job. And then you have the faction of clones that are being manipulated, and I mean, not just mentally, but physically manipulated to be these, mindless assassins. So I find that interesting. So there's this so the story is going to be, how do we get all those I'm just doing my job clones onto our side? And I put down here, it's and I mean, you have it listed as well. It's the Imperial agents hunting Omega, and I called them the assassins. Like, who are these assassins? And then we can specifically talk about who we think maybe the assassin is. Name is CX2 is what apparently it says in the closed captioning. But anyway,
Can we say a quick word of appreciation for D. Bradley Baker?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yes.
he's voicing basically everyone here.
as an aside, this is interesting. As an aside, there is I think she's New Zealand. Anyway, the Ray side, RAE, on Instagram. She joins the guys on Star Wars Underworld. I don't know. I haven't listened to their podcast for a while, so I don't know if she's still on there. But she was getting crap for saying Omega, and which is the way the
watch company.
well the way that the actress who voices Omega pronounces it, because she's from New Zealand, but they're like, everybody else says Omega, all the other clones say Omega, and I'm just pounding on my desk going, because they're voiced by an American.
They're voiced by one guy.
Voiced by one guy who's an American. We all say, we just say Omega, but maybe somebody should have said, these guys should be saying Omega, but
you can't say majority wins when it's all one dude. I'm sorry.
But anyway, it just drove me bonkers that people are giving her crap for that, and it's just like, well, if that's the way New Zealand, people, pronounce it, then that's the way it's pronounced. And like I said, you got the American over here who's faking a New Zealand accent. Anyway, so that's an aside. So let's talk about these assassins. This is really interesting. We had an encounter with one of them last season, and it's where he took the suicide pill or whatever, and they finally caught one in this episode. And it was also revealed. I guess revealed. I didn't know that they were trying to make Crosshair into one of these assassins. Mm-hmm. Was that news to you guys as well, or did I fall asleep during an episode in season 2? Yes, it makes sense.
No, they didn't firmly establish that previously. No, they were experimenting on him clearly, but here's where he reveals, yes, they were trying to make me into one of these.
So. Okay, so we have these. They're like totally, men in black, wiping the minds of and stripping the identities of these clones. They're taking away their numbers. They're wiping their brains. They're just the whole thing, and to be these assassins. First thing that comes to my brain is, perhaps this is the beginning of the Death Troopers from Rogue One that we saw in Rogue One. Mm-hmm. That we kind of saw what they looked like when, Crosshair's team, when they're all in black, but none of them, they were all just, recruited people. But anyway, I was wondering if maybe these clones are the beginning of the Death Troopers. The other thing, a lot of people on the internets are speculating that perhaps this CX2 is Tech.
Could be.
And
maybe
it's very interesting in this episode because, when he fell off the waterfall, and then he keeps doing something on his arm to repair himself. So is this going to be like a Bucky Barnes type of a thing? I don't know. So I throw my own theory and then somebody else's theory. What do you think?
All I'll say about that is that I think they're clearly setting up this character as the antagonist for Crosshair specifically. They were going toe to toe throughout these episodes, and it was very obvious that it's turning personal quickly. They're each trying to take the other one out. And it works really well narratively because like this character, from what we know, is like sort of the polar opposite of Crosshair. And Crosshair at this point is flawed and he's got the shaking hands, and he now has a conscience, and he has these sorts of weak points which you can apply pressure to, and it's going to be very difficult and challenging for him to overcome and prevail ultimately. And I think like that's where a lot of the drama is going to come from. And this guy, whoever he is, may end up being the end of Crosshair. When he went over the waterfall, I mean, kids were like, "Oh, he's dead." And I'm like,
not until you see a body, kids. Not until you see a body.
I was like, yeah, we're gonna say that, and sure enough, turns back up. And again, like because they've gone to the trouble of establishing this character, a lot like Rook, at the end of Rebels.
Yeah.
They've got this sort of relentless tracker after them now. And I was getting mad because like, a guy kept going off script and they're like, what are you doing? But then like he kept getting away with it. I don't know what the command structure looked like where this guy was able to sort of supersede and do whatever he wanted to do. But like, I'm like, that doesn't really work, right? In a military setting, some guy that just won't follow orders,
And it might not be.
that doesn't work.
And it might not be tech, but it could actually be just one clone that is made up of, all of the Bad Batch. Because you mentioned he's a tracker. He's a heck of a shot, so perhaps they're, taking all those elements that made the Bad Batch into one person. I don't know. But I did find it interesting. Like I said, they made a big point about him repairing himself. But anyway, so.
Yeah,
And I'm
no, it's-
using he pronouns too, and I'm not sure that we're there yet.
Sure. Yeah.
Right?
Fair.
I think we are, but my first thought was this could be Asajj. But anyway,
that's a good point.
Yeah, I think it gets interesting because what we've seen from the Empire is they don't throw away anything. They find out that the Empire is good about recycling. They believe in recycling. You think, oh no, for as cavalier and as careless they are for the individual, they don't throw away something that's got value. We saw with Crosshair, they could have very well said, okay, he's just going to be a lab test subject, and he was, but then they try to reclaim him into one of these assassin clones, which it was interesting that in some ways their gear and their equipment and their rifle look very similar to Crosshair. So it makes me wonder if maybe they borrowed some elements of his capabilities and try to replicate it across a number of other clones with various degrees of success.
So let's talk about Crosshair a little bit here because we got more development of him in this episode, which I really dug. We got more of the story. Hauser is really ticked off at him because, he had his squad arrested, back in whatever, season 1, season 2. Anyway, and basically it finally came out and said, why did you come back to our side? And I loved his answer. He said, loyalty. It's like, you think about it. You could be loyal to the company you work for, but the minute your company doesn't show you that same loyalty is when you become disenchanted, when you become less about, going that extra mile, or you maybe start looking for greener pastures. You know what I mean? And so I found that very interesting. And it builds up the fact that this guy who was the big baddie for a season and a half, 2 seasons, whatever, has integrity. and has a moral compass.
He always did, and that was why it was compelling television, because like you really sort of pulled for him to reunite with his friends, and his squad mates, but you also understood his point of view. I'm following orders, and I don't know what else I'm supposed to do. Like this is the path that's laid out in front of me. This is what you do. Um, Ultimately, like you said, there's no reciprocal loyalty there for him. And where did he get it? Like, he didn't get it from his former squad mates, really. He got it from Omega.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so she's just absolutely critical in this whole thing, and that's how he was able to reintegrate, and that's how ultimately he's probably going to provide their salvation.
Well, and she said something really interesting to him because he was like, "Are you sure you can carry all that? Are you sure you?" And she's like, "You sound like Hunter," which you sound like the person who cares about me the most. You know, that's what was getting across there. So you're right.
Well, and it's interesting because the person who's humanized each member of the Bad Batch has been Omega. You know, before that we knew them as soldiers. Clone Force 99, they take on missions, they have their personalities, they're who they are. The person that's allowed them to think of life outside of that has been Omega. In a weird way, Hunter becomes Omega's dad, and Tech becomes like an uncle, and Wrecker becomes like a big brother because Omega is there. And it's interesting that she's having the similar effect on Crosshair. And at first, it was clear that Crosshair was trying to kind of challenge that or try to prevent that. But now it's up to, even Crosshair is now in the same boat where it's Omega who's humanizing him. It's Omega who's making him think beyond himself. Because you're right, he was looking for loyalty from somebody, but in a weird way, it's almost like Omega, by giving that to him in a point in his life where he had no reason to expect it, is forcing him to redesign in his head just what that loyalty means, who he owes it to, who's important to him. So,
And I'm jumping back real quick because, again, talking about loyalty, and I want to jump back to Wolf because the thing that also struck me is that, remember in Rebels, he's the one that rats out Ezra and Kanan and everybody. He lets the Empire know. So his loyalty never totally shifts, I suppose, or, that's going to be an interesting story. So like I said, I'm sorry, I bounced back and forth to that.
no, but it's important to kind of remember that because that is coming down the line. And, the way that they leave it with Wolf at the end of Extraction, it is very clearly we will see each other again at some point. So we know that when that happens, the dynamics might have shifted. Maybe Wolf is no longer loyal to the Empire, on a conscious level. But the problem, as we know, is there's all that subconscious training, programming, in the back of their heads that is proving harder and harder for someone to move on from. So we'll see. We'll see how eventually Wolf leaves.
Did you both find it, Dave? I'll toss it to you. Did you find it odd that they got away so scot clean at the end? I mean, like, not one of Wolf's crew was like, "What the heck are we doing? You're letting the people we've been chasing for, a day just fly away." I mean, that was kind of interesting. I don't know if that's I don't know. It was kind of weird.
I go back to that is like in sharp juxtaposition. His team, sharp juxtaposition to this assassin, this unnamed assassin, because this assassin's just doing whatever they want. Oh, we all need to do this. No, I'm going to shoot to kill. It's like, no, we need to use, stun, and no, I'm going to, blow up their base. It's like, but they 100% in line, which tells you either they take the situation in the structure, the command structure in place, like 100% seriously. And like, more so for whatever reason, there's a lot of potential motivations for that, right? He's a great commander. He's the sort of guy that'll shoot you in the face if you disobey an order. They have been in so many tight spots that they know that the only way to get through them is to follow what he says. They, it's implanted in their brains because of the chips or whatever. Like you can go. There's half dozen reasons that you could probably list off as to why, but what's clear is they follow orders, which again is kind of a theme that we've seen. Good soldiers follow orders, and they do that. So, like you mentioned earlier, like there's these different factions of clones, and they're the Empire experimental weirdos that are like, I'll do whatever the Empire tells me to do, but I'll do it in whatever way I see fit. And then you've got the Bad Batch types who are like, we're just trying to survive out here, and we're trying to rally people behind our cause because we think our cause is just. Let's all get together and let's all fight together. And then you've got Wolf's crew, who are still very much in the place that Crosshair was in. Good soldiers follow orders. And I think like that's why when he was like, at the very end, no, let him go. Not one of them like raised a gun or like flinched or made a move because that's what their commander told them to do. Now, like you could reason that out and say like, well, wouldn't somebody have questioned him in that moment? Like, sir, should we really be doing this? Sir, I'm going to relieve you of your command because you're falling. You're not doing your duty. But no, I think there's a history there that tells them that they need to stay in line, and I think that's why they stayed in line there.
So let's talk about this series at a macro level right now. If this episode would have happened in Rebels, and I used the word earlier, people would have been screaming filler. You know what I mean? So I guess my question is, have we just, because every episode that people cried that it was filler pays off at the end of Rebels, whatever season, it all paid off. Have they gotten better at storytelling in that they keep the story moving along while setting up these pieces? Or have we just now accepted that there's going to be some some
peaks
dips
and valleys?
Have they just gotten us used to their storytelling, or have they gotten better at it? I actually think and there's one thing that's different about the Bad Batch right now is that it does seem like one large story versus several episodic, standalone stories like Rebels tended to be. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think in terms of overall story quality, they keep. I mean, we saw them get better from Clone Wars to Rebels, back to Clone Wars, now into Bad Batch. So we can see that they're getting not just smarter, but understanding of what it is that these episodes are meant to do. I do kind of, part of me they kind of go like, well, wait a minute. Rex is running a secret clones outfit, trying to undermine the Empire, trying to find where their secret base is, and it doesn't occur to him to not bring the brainwashed assassin guy back to his main headquarters. Why not just bring him to the secondary base, and just in case the Empire turns up, we're saying, "Oh, we've tracked them all along," kind of thing. But other than that, I mean, I think what these episodes are doing is they're giving us not only a bit more exposition, a bit more of the background of what's happening, but they're putting our characters in a position where they're having to always test and challenge their preconceptions, their beliefs. Because this is one of the advantages of having the majority of your cast all look the same. We can tell the difference between Rex and Wolf and Hauser and Hunter and Crosshair. D. Bradley Baker's talent such that we can hear their differences. But part of the dynamic is they're all the same face. They're all the same person in a certain way. So the idea of all of these clones having to come up with an answer on their own is really riveting and exciting, and it creates a different storytelling than, say, you got in Rebels, where you kind of knew, okay, these people are all on the side of good and these other people on the side of evil.
Dave, your alarm went off, so we're at time. So you get the last word on, like I said, the macro level or just on these episodes. So
my overall sentiment would that be that I would agree with Fredo that I think there's a real sophistication, I guess, at this point. When you talked, it's like, well, are they getting better at this? Yeah, I think that's part of it. But I also think that just the fact that you are you're centered on a small group of individuals. Because I go back to Clone Wars, right? And you talk about the filler thing. And like, if there's a critique of Clone Wars, it's that, where you have these episodes that are sort of like, I'll throw that away. But I think like part of the reason for that is because like it is so disparate. You're talking, well, here's the Jar Jar episode. Okay, next week's the Grievous episode, and then the week after that we're going back to the clones, and then after that we're going back to Obi-Wan, and then now we got to go back to Anakin, and you get to a point with it where you're sort of like you're hopping around so much that like some of the stuff begins to just sort of naturally become less important to the overall narrative. And the overall narrative ultimately with that was sort of Ahsoka, the clones, and then sort of by extension everyone else who sort of circled those orbits, which would have been Anakin, Obi-Wan, and then the Sith people. But like here it's a small group of people, and it's a small group of people that you're in it every week with them. It's the same, regardless of what kind of adventures they're getting into and how dangerous they feel or how at risk you think these people are. You're there with them, and so you are sort of attached to them, and like even if it's one line of dialogue, if you get that one line that tells you a little bit more about who they are, where they come from, or what their relationships are, you're thankful for that. And you're like, okay, we did some building here. And it doesn't feel disposable on that level. Now, I mean, like eventually I'm going to get to a point with this where I'm going to be like, here's your Bad Batch viewer guide, and here are the episodes you can skip. I probably will do that because I'm a giant hypocrite. But like at the same time, I think like when they're able to sort of like narrow their focus on particular characters, like they are here and like they did in Rebels, you become a little more forgiving of an episode that maybe has less stakes.
Well, all right. Well, the next episode that comes out on Wednesday is called Bad Territory.
Dun, dun, dun.
They're really good at making, titles that you can't really even begin to guess as to what they're talking about. So anyway, so yeah, that's and it's episode 8, right? So we officially over the halfway mark, aren't we?
We're halfway there.
Yeah. Okay.
Living on a prayer.
Oh, jeez. Thanks. All right. Well, let us know what you thought of these 2 episodes on social media, or like I said, if you see us on the street corner or out at the St. Patrick's Day Parade, that will probably be lurking about somewhere. And speaking of which, everybody have a wonderful St. Patrick's Day. And
St. Patty, not St. Patty, St. Patty.
Yes. Yeah. Just say St. Patrick's Day. Yes. But yes, that we can you're going to get me into my whole Irish soapbox here in a little bit. But anyway, before we go off the rails, we will
Is that
say,
a box of Irish Spring?
yeah, we will say, who dat?
Who dat?
Who dat?
Everybody have a great week.
McConkey.